The question of who wears the modern crown in boxing has returned to center stage, and this time it is not being asked in whispers. In the weeks since Terence Bud Crawford's emphatic victory over Canelo Alvarez, the sport has been flooded with familiar debate. Where does Crawford now rank in relation to Floyd Mayweather Jr., the undefeated technician whose name has dominated pound-for-pound conversations for 2 decades? The comparison is as inevitable as it is combustible. One fighter, Mayweather, built a 5-0-0 record on defense, ring IQ, and resumed stuff with champions. The other, Crawford, has carved through divisions with a blend of switch-hitting precision, adaptability, and timing that makes even seasoned observers reach for superlatives. After Crawford's performance against Alvarez, voices across boxing, from Canelo himself to veteran analysts and former champions, have weighed in with a mix of respect, caution, and bold predictions. Canelo Alvarez did not sit on the fence. In the immediate aftermath of his defeat, the undisputed Mexican star offered direct praise for the American who beat him and nudged the conversation toward territory few expected to visit so soon. "Terence Crawford is amazing," Alvarez said, crediting Crawford's skill and timing, and crucially, pressing the point that the Omaha native has proven himself across weight classes. "I tried everything," Alvarez admitted. "I trained hard." He deserves all the credit. Asked where Crawford's performance ranked, Alvarez did not hesitate. He insisted that at this point Crawford would finish Floyd Mayweather if they met. "We already knew Crawford is a great fighter," he said. "Now everyone else sees it. He has everything." Alvarez's acknowledgement came with candor about his own limitations in the fight. Pressed on what gave him the most trouble, movement, speed, power, he answered without dressing it up. "Everything," he said. "Sometimes you try, and your body just doesn't go. That's my frustration. Maybe I couldn't figure him out, but my body could not respond the way it used to. That's it. He's a great fighter. He knows how to move everything." Canelo's comments matter, because few in modern boxing have shared a ring with both men. He fought Mayweather at 23, talented, raw, not yet the fully formed champion he would later become, and he fought Crawford as the face of the sport, carrying the responsibilities of a global star into every round. Trainer and analyst Greg Hackett highlighted this context succinctly. The Canelo who lost to Mayweather was a much less refined fighter than the one Crawford defeated. When Floyd beat him, he was 23. He wasn't polished, Hackett said. When Bud beat him, he was the man. The line is not an indictment of Mayweather's signature win as much as it is a recognition of timeline. Crawford faced Alvarez at his mature apex, when the Mexican had answered nearly every question posed to him and stood as the active benchmark for greatness. No discussion of Crawford's night is complete without acknowledging what he climbed to get there. Joe Rogan, whose podcast has become a regular stop for combat sport analysis, sounded astonished at the scale of the achievement. Crawford, at 37, moved up 2 full divisions and beat a dominant champion who made weight classes look like suggestions for years. "That's history," Rogan said. "You shouldn't be able to do that. You shouldn't be able to fight at that weight for the first time ever against one of the greatest and do what you did." He called Crawford an anomaly beyond the usual outlier label. "By any account," he added, 37, my body was wrecked. He's something special." Crawford's continued ascent has prompted pundits to pull out old measuring sticks. Former 2-division champion Paulie Malignaggi, who divides his time between commentary and coaching, struck a pragmatic note while acknowledging the thrill of the debate. Mayweather and Crawford, he argued, represent different eras and different sets of challenges. "These conversations never really end," Malignaggi noted. "It's what makes boxing fun." Floyd's resume is full of champions. Even late in his career, he fought ex-champs at 147 and 154. Crawford has conquered multiple divisions and beaten elite opponents. They both have cases. The temptation to assign a single answer will remain strong. The wiser approach, as Malignaggi suggested, is to recognize that greatness wears more than one face. Not everyone opted for the middle path. Timothy Bradley Jr., the former world champion turned commentator, offered a decisive view rooted in the technical details he values. In Bradley's assessment, Crawford has all the tools required to beat Mayweather, even in his prime, an argument few make without caveats. Terence Crawford will beat Floyd Mayweather, Bradley said flatly, "He's got everything it takes." Floyd struggled in the first half against Zab Judah. Terrific fighter, but he's no Crawford, especially from the southpaw stance. Bradley pointed to Crawford's 75-inch reach as compared to Mayweather's 72-inch. His back foot counterpunching, his ability to switch comfortably between orthodox and southpaw, and his focus under pressure. Floyd reaches with that right hand at times, Bradley noted. Against one of the best back foot counterpunchers in the game, he gets slept reaching. Bradley's argument will divide fans, but is grounded in the details coaches watch for. Anyone who has followed Crawford's career has watched him make the adjustment mid-fight, shifting from testing to punishing, solving opponents in real time, and then closing the show. The suggestion that he could trouble even a defensive master like Mayweather relies on that adaptable violence. Bradley's case, in other words, is not built on bravado. It's built on tape. With the victory over Alvarez banked, attention has already turned to Crawford's next steps. Reports indicate the three-division champion is seriously considering a run at a sixth world title, which would place him among a very short list of fighters in history. That pursuit would most likely take him to middleweight, a glamour division full of names and history. The calls have already begun. Janabek Alimkhanuly, the unified IBF and WBO middleweight champion, issued a direct challenge, daring Crawford to step up to 160 and meet him. Alimkhanuly's team used precisely the kind of language that animates competitive egos. "Don't be afraid. We're waiting." For Crawford, a fight with a Kazakh title holder would present more than a belt. It would offer the chance to prove, again, that size and narrative are tools rather than barriers. The opinions within the sport extend beyond middleweight. Some voices argue that if Crawford wants to surpass Mayweather's legacy in the harshest minds, he must aim for the tallest wall. Dmitry Bivol at light heavyweight. Bivol, the technician who beat a prime Canelo Alvarez at 175 and unified the division against Artur Beterbiev, represents a combination of size, skill, and composure that would test any fighter on earth, let alone one moving up multiple classes. The argument is sweeping. If Crawford defeated Bivol, the win would erase the last pockets of doubt among skeptics and write him into a column that is, for many, reserved for only a handful of names. It would also be an act of audacity beyond what Mayweather attempted. However decorated his resume remains. Here, the sports mythology comes into play. Middleweight at 160 pounds is not an ordinary stop. It is a division that made Marvin Hagler a permanent reference point, that saw Sugar Ray Robinson's artistry and Sugar Ray Leonard's tests against men like Thomas Hearns. Welterweight at 147 is boxing's traditional engine, the class Crawford made undisputed by knocking out every opponent he faced. Heavyweight tops the list when it is healthy, as it appears to be again. Lightweight sits in the conversation too. But middleweight carries a shine that makes crossing it an act of imagination and ambition. Crawford's own team has signaled that if he stays in boxing and moves down from super middleweight after the Alvarez fight, he will not drop below 160. That sets the parameters neatly. 6 divisions would require a belt at middleweight. Alimkhanuly holds 2 of them and looks like the clearest path. His undefeated record and methodical control make him a legitimate hurdle for fans and analysts alike. Simply entertaining a Crawford-Alimkhanuly fight is enough to stir a new round of arguments and predictions. All of these future castings sit atop a past that explained Crawford's present aura. An analyst recently revisited Miguel Silky Smooth Gonzalez, the last man to beat Crawford back in the amateurs, and described the only reliable method for taking rounds off him now. "You have to punch with him," the analyst said. "You have to counter him and punch with him, bang the body, stay on him. Fight him in the phone booth if you can." Crawford's switch hitting used to unsettle even him. "He switches, and I don't get too caught up in that," the analyst said, "but he got low in the ring, cut his height down. I had a field day with that. He should have stayed tall. I stayed in his chest. You have to counter him. You have to fight him." That blueprint was more applicable back in the day. He allowed. The version of Crawford that exists now, disciplined, patient, and alert to his own tendency to bite on a firefight, has matured away from that easier lure. He can be drawn into a war less often. He controls when exchanges occur far better than he did in his 20s. The man behind the latest masterclass framed it more bluntly. Brian Bomac McIntyre, Crawford's longtime trainer, described the Alvarez fight as straightforward because of the work done long before the walk-in. "We were prepared for every scenario," he said, praising his fighter's execution and the corner's communication. Observers noted the same on the night. A disciplined corner with clarity in rounds that often turn chaotic. Questions about whether this version of Crawford takes the fights fans suggest, what some call ducking when negotiations don't align, were met by McIntyre with characteristic candor. "He's not ducking," he said. "He's his own man. He chose his path. When it doesn't match what other people want, they call it what they want. But look at his achievements." In other words, current criticism is not new. It's the noise that accompanies greatness. It is important to say out loud what sometimes gets lost in the rush to anoint a new best ever. Floyd Mayweather's career remains exemplar in many respects. Discipline over time, technical mastery, a resume that spans multiple eras. Former Olympic medalist Tony Jeffries recently walked viewers to the technical edge that made Mayweather untouchable in his prime. "He never wasted a step," Jeffries said. "He pivoted just enough to take away the angle, reset in the center, and used his feet to control every fight. That footwork placed him in the ideal position to defend and return, often in one motion. A small sidestep created punching lanes and removed his opponent's options. Without good feet, nothing else matters," Jeffries concluded. He also reminded audiences of the quality of opposition. Champions and ex-champions, even as Mayweather moved up. Fighters like Miguel Cotto at 154, still dangerous. A young Canelo Alvarez, less polished but clearly ascending. People underestimate the things he did because time passes. Jeffries said, but he fought names that still matter now. Which brings the conversation back to where it began. The Crawford versus Mayweather argument will never be settled in a ring. They will not fight, and additions to either resume are writ large in fully different calendars. What remains, then, is analysis of styles, context, and accomplishments, and regard for the men who built them. Floyd Mayweather's record speaks for itself. Terence Crawford's recent run, in which he became undisputed at welterweight by stopping everyone, then moved up 2 classes at 37 and beat Canelo Alvarez, demands its own space. In the short term, Crawford's next steps will define how far the comparison carries. If he pursues middleweight in the 6th division title, his ambition will have a fresh stage. A bout with Janibek Alimkhanuly would extend a list of challenges that has already made him one of the most intriguing fighters of the modern era. A leap to light heavyweight to face Dmitry Bivol would mark one of the most audacious decisions of a career already full of them. Whether that happens is a question for managers, sanctioning bodies, broadcasters, and a fighter who knows better than most how to read his own limits. One other truth has emerged from the latest cycle of reaction. The sport is recognizing Crawford not only as a great fighter of his era, but as a rare athlete whose intelligence travels with power. The way he shut down Canelo's offense, interrupting the singles, punishing the counters, neutralizing rhythm, was not an accident. It was a map. Where Mayweather often removed his opponents by denying them accuracy and access, Crawford removes them by closing pathways and offering paid exits. The results look different. The effect is the same. It would be a mistake to treat this as a referendum on one fighter's legacy over another. It is better read as a measure of current greatness. That in itself is a compliment. The first category Mayweather claims effortlessly is time. He proved it over 20 years. Crawford is writing a different kind of note, an argument for greatness that peaks late and does not care about conventional ceilings. He is doing it in ways that invite even his skeptics to revisit their positions.